the provision of services.
Yes, great. Thank you so much, Basia. Good morning, everyone. So following the presentation of the 7P framework, we start with provision of services, as Basia mentioned. So provision of services refers to the services offered to support victims and their families, but also offenders, perpetrators, and bystanders of gender-based violence, but also other institutional community members who are affected by it. So this P also refers to the professionals who provide the services, for example, those involved in counseling victim survivors, and to those who provide existing tools such as guidelines or learning materials that we mentioned in our previous webinars. So provision of services overlaps with other Ps, notably protection, prosecution, but also partnerships, which we will discuss later. And this is because the Ps are closely interlinked to provide a holistic approach to address gender-based violence, as we have said before. Now, more specifically, provision of services can include general support and helplines, is information for the services, but also psychological support services in counseling, medical aid in healthcare, legal counseling and advocacy services, but also conflict resolution services and support services for bystanders. Counseling and rehabilitation programs for perpetrators are also included in the services provided, and referrals to professionals and external services such as police and legal services and harassment crisis centers are an important part of the provision of services, in addition to capacity building for students, staff, and professionals. Now, the support provided should be tailor-made to individual needs if applicable, and may include access to a variety of external services. Confidentiality, as we will also discuss later, is a key consideration throughout the process of provision of services. Counseling services and general support, such as psychological support or medical and legal assistance, are among the main services offered to the target groups. And organizations can provide information and support to victims who may need to take legal actions, such as filing a complaint, a policy report, or obtaining a restraining order. And similarly, advocacy services provide assistance in navigating the reporting process and connecting victims, but also perpetrators with legal and medical resources, but also support them throughout the institution's disciplinary process. Now, let's move on. See, when we approach the design of provision of services, we need to make sure that we provide clear and accessible information. The resources and services offered by the institution, as well as information on the reporting and disciplinary procedure, should be made clear and easy to understand. All these available resources, such as the contact information, the email addresses, the working hours of the services, any training material offered, should be also featured on the website of the school, of the department, of the units. And it is crucial that the staff and students are aware of these available support services. Therefore, a strong communication strategy will enhance the spread of information, but it will also give the users the confidence that the university has the capacity to provide professional support in case of an incident. And another point to consider is ensuring professionalism and confidentiality. Staff members of the service should be trained and qualified professionals able to offer support and guidance, responding to the needs of the survivors and victims with sensitivity and understanding. You don't need any individual who reach out to the service to be treated like in any other service. Therefore, it is paramount that the approach provided by the service is trauma-informed and victim-centered. Now, any private information about the user of the service is, of course, protected, guaranteeing privacy and confidentiality. To ensure accessibility and inclusion, the services provider should be also granted and easily accessible to all staff and to all students and staff members, regardless of their status. even if they are trainers, if they're visiting lecturers, if they're part-time staff, research fellow, or mobility students, the access and provision of services should be granted. It is also good practice to provide various means of conducting the service, therefore consider online and offline channels. And the institution also needs to consider how it will ensure the provision of services in case of need to individuals who are in location where services may be less accessible. And we mentioned that before, consider field trips or remote research sites, or when students are abroad for seminars and conferences. A possible solution for this might be to provide information and context to staff and students who are planning to travel about the local support services. So we provide this information prior to their trip. And this can include contact information to local emergency services or medical facilities and other support organizations. Now, remote support services may also include crisis hotlines, emails, or even video conferencing to individuals who find themselves in situations where they require immediate assistance. Now, in order to foster collaboration, provision of services is directly linked to partnerships, which we'll also discuss later, and may rely on these external services and collaborations. For example, services provided by non-governmental and civil society organizations. Now, collaborations with local law enforcement agencies and healthcare providers and community organizations help to ensure that victims, their families, but also bystanders and offenders and perpetrators have access to this range of resources and supports services they need. And moving on to some tips and hints for provision of services. For the effective provision of services and immediate support, a centralized unit within the institution is responsible for overseeing the services offered. And it is advisable that such unit can be served as a hub or a dispatching unit. Now, in cases that the institution has more than one main campus, we need to ensure that at least one first responder is available in all sites, because we don't want the individuals who experience an incident have to travel or commute to other campus in order to get assistance and support. Services should be equipped and capable to address all forms of gender-based violence, as we repeatedly mentioned with the several Ps. And we need to consider offering an easily accessible booking system for appointments with the service staff, or for in-person, either for in-person or virtual meeting. And when incidents are reported anonymously, we need to remember to provide information for all the services available in case the victim would like to get support with indirect ways, such as attending a training or a webinar. So the provision of any type of service should be available regardless of the time frame of the incident. For example, in case of the reporting incident month happens months after the incident happened. Now, in case of student victims who have been affected by the incident, we need to consider offering the option for applying for extenuating circumstances, so that an extension of an assignment or other deadline, or rescheduling for exams, but also transferring to another class or attending online classes can be granted. We need also to consider to provide first aid guidance on the unit's institutional website in case of an incident is happening outside working hours. And in addition to what we mentioned in the second webinar for prevention, information for bystander intervention practices can be accompanied by a short guide for all members of the institution, but also friends of victims on how they can act as supporters in case of an individual is sharing an incident that happened now or months before. So how do we support? So such information could be accompanied with the bystander intervention practices and material offered. And lastly, the provision of mediation services is considered controversial as it can be re-traumatizing for victims to be confronted with their perpetrator. So mediation should never be imposed, but can be offered as an option. But in any case, the needs and expectations of the victim or complainant should prevail, and no pressure should be exercised to steer the victim towards mediation, and both parties, of course, should be on equal footing. So an option might be to have each party assisted by a distinct counselor, and that these counselors then bilaterally exchange towards a mediated solution. That would be an option. And moving to the last part of provision of services, how do we ensure intersectionality? How can provision of services be sensitive to intersectionality? By putting in place a diverse support team, for example, a person of color or member of the LGBTQIA+ community may feel more at ease when speaking to someone they can relate to, the individuals who report feel that they can relate to. So consider building partnerships with external services and non-government organizations that can support in such inclusive representation. And this is something that we will also highlight in partnerships. And lastly, when tendering and contracting external services, we need to ensure that the service is sensitive and used to working with different socio-demographic groups. And having said that, we now move to partnership, which is highly connected with provision of services. Therefore, we're going back to Basia.
Thank you, Panayota. Actually, speaking about provision of services, you understand that this is closely tied with the partnerships P. So partnerships relate to the involvement of all relevant actors inside an institutions against the approach against gender-based violence. So we have at all levels actors that can help us with the gender-based violence, such as governmental agencies, civil society organizations, service providers, trade unions, or staff and student associations. External partnerships can complement the skills, competencies, and expertise that are available inside the institution. So in the context of academia, we can provide you with a few examples of external partnerships. So partnerships with governmental and local agencies, including legal, police, and criminal justice organizations, could assist you in the provision of counseling and legal assistance as mentioned. Partnerships with civil society organizations, the local government, and NGOs, for example, can help you with the design of policies and the implementation of specific measures. These partnerships could help you in organizing joint initiatives, events, awareness-raising campaigns, training programs on gender-based violence, and any other thing that you can think of. You can even be creative with those type of partnerships. Similarly, partnerships with student groups and associations to engage with students from several universities in prevention efforts and create a supportive environment for those who experience gender-based violence. Also, you can collaborate with the private sector for the provision of specific expertise that is missing inside your institution, such as training for the creation of specific tools and resources. For example, you can develop some type of digital tools to connect with students, with support services, to create panic buttons, and so on. Also, you can partner with other universities, which means that you can do that for mutual learning and for exchange of good practices and resources. So now, if we understand what the partnerships P refers to. If we want to approach partnership, how do we do that? As a first step, we will advise you to map the different actors. So we will ask someone to identify all the potential internal and external partners, groups, or organizations that work with gender-based violence, and of course the support services. You may start by reaching out to any established links and connections that you may already have inside the institution or that you personally have or your group has, before you're expanding to a larger network. And you can introduce the scope of your university activities to address gender-based violence and explain the mutual interest in partnering and ask about their work and their services. Then, as a second step, you can develop a partnership agreement with joint actions and activities. After establishing the contact, work with your partners to develop a clear and comprehensive plans that outlines the goals, the roles, and also the responsibilities of each partner. What we have found as useful is that a memorandum of understanding or similar agreement could also detail the resources and support that you will provide to each other and defines the collaboration. Always remember that evaluation is key and that you can evaluate the effectiveness of the collaboration after the implementation of the first set of action and activities. So you can assess the impact on the university's community, and you can then tailor any activities and refine the partnerships that you may already have or expand. Lastly, on approaching partnerships, you may seek to expand the partnerships to include more organizations, more groups that can contribute to your goals and efforts. Think that diverse stakeholders and communities could be integrated to address intersectional aspects of gender-based violence, but we will talk about that a few slides later. Okay. Now, some tips and hints on approaching partnerships. We have found out that participation in EU and international projects such as UniSAFE or international events and activities is very beneficial for universities. You may start by looking for European projects and funding at the funding office of your university, if that exists, if you have an EU project office, for example, to identify if there are any potential groups or partners for collaboration already. Then you can leverage any funding opportunities to support the partnerships. So this can include grants, research funding, corporate sponsorships, and also individual donations. You can build also and leverage on informal networks and encourage this factor of partnerships, highlighting having the importance of having good relations with key actors and networks. For example, with professors that are change agents inside the organization. It is important to have in mind that having the right people in the right places is the motto while mapping the different actors. So it is important to assess also the willingness and competence of key people to see what there is inside your institution, because these people can be helpful in the successful design and implementation of activities. It is also important to know still too often important responsibilities are carried by unpaid volunteers, and that is not good practice. On the contrary, it is important that these functions are formalized and are recognized functions inside the institutions rather than temporary members that are informal and that are unpaid. A few more tips and hints. Just let me change the slide. The participation in funding schemes and awards, for example, we have identified the HRS4R, has proven to create a favorable environment for more partnerships. Also, external partnerships can be mobilized to different degrees. either to allow for the provision of services on behalf of an under-resourced responsible unit, or as important support. Consider also getting external consultation for victims from an independent organization that deals with issues such as sexual harassment even before an official complaint is made. And think intersectionally by building partnerships with a network of translators, for example, that could benefit the provision of services in different languages. Just be creative and build various forms of partnerships. And thinking intersectionally about partnerships, recruiting, for example, facilitators and advisors from external organizations with a specialization on intersectionality or with intersectional characteristics, for example, from different minority groups, age groups, and so on. You can create more favorable conditions for change, and you can create an environment that is safe for reporting and seeking support. As previously mentioned, potential partnerships could be with partner organizations and associations that deal with forms of violence that are specifically related to intersecting discriminations. Therefore, collaborations with organizations that work with specific groups, for example, the LGBTQI+, minority groups, refugees, and so on, can provide services and support for survivors from different communities. These organizations can provide insights into the unique challenges and experience that survivors from different backgrounds are facing, and can help your institution to develop programs and services that are more inclusive and more relevant to all. And saying that, we will move on the last P of the 7P framework, which is policies, and Pan will explain more about that.
Thank you, Vasya. So again, yes, moving to the last P, policies, which cover first policy frameworks, which refer to a coherent set of measures, the clear vision and comprehensive strategy that respond to the incidents of gender-based violence in an, let's say, integral and structured way. But also policies covers policy documents, which formalize explicitly and specifically the organization's commitment to addressing gender-based violence. Policies can take different forms, such as protocols, action plans, informative or explanatory documents, strategies, regulations, but also procedures and directives, and may also include definitions of the different forms of gender-based violence, but also code of conduct that we mentioned before, procedures for reporting and responding to incidents of gender-based violence, prevention measures, support services and training programs, but also monitoring, evaluation, and timelines for these. It's a holistic policy document addressing all P's, as you can tell. Setting up an effective policies to address gender-based violence requires a comprehensive approach involving key elements and steps. Some suggestions on how to practically set up a well-functioning policies is to start by investigating the legal background at a national and European level. A good practice understanding the legal framework as well as the existing measures will allow you to support your rationale for the policies and measures suggested. UniSAFE has mapped the legal and policy framework of the different EU countries, and you can find the interactive maps and country reports on UniSAFE website, but also shared in the chat with you. We will also share this in the follow-up email. So it is important to have a good understanding of the institutional context, as it can affect the implementation of the policies. This includes the organizational structure, governance, culture, but also resources. So conducting this internal assessment can help you identify perhaps potential challenges or resistances to the implementation, and you will also be able to determine how to address them. Now, to ensure that the policy meets the organization's needs, defining and co-creating measures with stakeholders such as students, the faculty, the staff, the top and middle management, decision makers, but also the professionals who are already working on this topic, is a key to grasping the specific context and tailor the policy to the community's needs. So this step will help you identify the needs of the different institutional communities, but also groups, to ensure an inclusive approach, as we repeatedly mentioned. It will also help to promote a transparency and accountability in policy design and implementation, but also setting up policies. We need to consider that it requires a variety of resources, from human resources to financial resources, and therefore we need to make sure that we outline what we already have available in terms of staff, expertise, but also funding and budget. And in addition, regular monitoring and evaluation of the policies and their implementation is needed to check their effectiveness. Therefore, qualitative and quantitative indicators will help us measure the short and long-term impact of the policies. Lastly, the top management leadership must endorse, but also commit to policies on addressing gender-based violence. Therefore, we need to make sure we get their support and approval. The policies must align with any regional, national, but also European legal framework. And effective policies are supported by, of course, the faculty and staff, the students, researchers in general, any other community members of the organization. So we need to make sure that these are also communicated with them other than the top management leadership. Now, UniSAFE developed a step-by-step guide for setting up such comprehensive policy framework addressing gender-based violence. So this guidance is particularly helpful for those who are at the beginning stages of creating and implementing a policy framework. It offers a great and excellent starting point with clear and easy to understand instructions and practical tips to help you design, implement, but also monitor and evaluate your plan. This action plan is not meant to be a standalone document, but rather it serves as a working tool. The aim is to integrate measures related to gender-based violence into the broader policies and practices of the organization to ensure a comprehensive and consistent approach. So this guide is also now shared at the chat with you, but we'll also share it with you later in the follow-up email. Now, some tips and hints on policies. We need to consider addressing all forms of gender-based violence policies, and we need to make sure that we have clearly established the institutional values, including what we consider as progressions, as not inappropriate behaviors, and we need to define clearly what gender-based violence is. Therefore, developing policies that incorporate these values and consider the current challenges, we also need to focus on proactive measures that rather than reactiveness to gender-based violence. So drafting the policy with a clear language and specific details and that reflect the scope and purpose is highly recommended. We also need to ensure institutional policies are known by all members of the organization. Therefore, we need to plan and implement a clear communication strategy to give visibility to the institutional policies, as this will support the effectiveness implementation. So therefore, we need to consider at which stage we promote this. For example, it could be for the incoming students and staff. So different strategies and clear communication strategies for the different groups of the community. And it's paramount to say again that we need to consider all pieces for a holistic approach. Lastly, intersectionality aspects are scarcely considered in policies on gender-based violence. What can we suggest in addition to to the previous piece, which are all coming up together in policies. Inclusion co-creation practices for the design of the policy are highly recommended. So we bring together the various groups that we mentioned repeatedly before. And we also need to consider having clear statements in the institution's policies for intersectionality, which this will create a favorable environment for intersectionality to be addressed also in the implementation of the measures. So guidance notes accompanying the policies will include case studies to show how intersectionality can be relevant. So concluding with policies, as you can tell, policies have been collecting what we have been saying for the last 6 Ps. It brings them all together. And having said that, we now conclude with the presentation of the 7P framework. And we have our last inspiring practice and exchange today, which focuses on provision of services. So I will give the floor back to Basia to present our guest speaker for today.
Thank you, Panayota. This wraps up all the Ps now. And as always, we have today a guest speaker, which is Cristina Gamberi. I hope that I'm pronouncing that well, from University of Bologna, that will present us the help desk against gender-based violence of the University of Bologna, which is an inspiring practice addressing the provision of services. Cristina is a research fellow at the University of Bologna, where she works on the strategy on equity, inclusion, and diversity. And she's also a program coordinator of the European Master in Women's and Gender Studies, the so-called GEMA. Cristina, we are very happy to have you here today. Would you like to share your screen and your presentation with us? Cristina, you are...
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very, very happy to be here with you. And I was following your presentation, and I took many notes because I found that really interesting and inspiring. That we have been creating a few months ago. Let me share some data regarding our university, just to give you a rough idea about our size and our numbers. We have almost 90,000 students, 80,000 are Italian, and 7,000 students are coming from abroad. And the 56% of these students, undergraduate and graduate, is female students. We have something like 6,000 employees, about half of whom are administrative staff, and the other half are teaching staff. And here you can see the statistics about the percentage between women and men. I'm not going into detail, but just to give you an idea about our university, we have 31 departments, and we have multi-campus structures, which means that apart from the main campus in the city, which is located in the city of Bologna, we have 4 more campuses in the Romagna region that are nevertheless part of our university. Is therefore a complex academic institution. I don't know if you can see the last key figure that are being created in the last few years in order to improve action and policies regarding equity and for the prevention of gender-based violence. We have the delegate for equity, inclusion and diversity, and I'm working in strict relation with her. We have the Guarantee Committee for Equal Opportunity, the CUG. We have the confidential counselor, and we have also a network of in each department of professors who are representative of the equal opportunity and diversity and equity. So we have also a sort of strategic network who can help us to promote in each department what we are doing at the central level. These are some of the institutional policy and legal framework and instrument that we have been using in the last few years. We have the strategic plan, the GEP, the Gender Equality Plan, and the Gender Equality Annual Report, and also the Code of Conduct for preventing and tackling moral and sexual harassment. I'm not going into detail about this document. You are probably already familiar with some of them because, for example, the Gender Equality Plan is part of the academic institutional policy since the advent of the Horizon scheme. But just to let you know that we are moving within a sort of ecosystem of policy and legal instrument that are helping us to promote concrete action. Our help desk has been open after the feminicide of one Unibos student, Emma Pezzemo. Was an international student who was studying social sciences, and she was killed in May 2021 by her partner. The year after, the university has organized a series of events spanning over 2 days in the 2nd and the 3rd of May last year to commemorate Emma Pezzemo, and also, of course, to raise awareness on gender-based violence. And we organize a series of public events and a huge meeting with more than 400 students from high school and middle school in order to talk about not only her story, but also to talk about from different perspectives, to talk about gender-based violence. The opening of the actual help desk was on the 12th of October last year online, and then the following week the help desk was also opened in presence. In order to launch and to promote the opening of the help desk, we organize an event by inviting a series of experts from our university, of course, but also from the local community. And for example, we invite the personnel who was, of course, operating in the help desk from the Women's Center in Bologna. We also invite a journalist from Giulia, who is a national network of women's journalists who are trying to working towards equality in media and journalism. We also invite a procurator, so a person who is in charge of doing the investigation for criminal cases. I will now try to describe as clear as possible the service. The service is free of charge and offers protected listening and support space for all the different forms of violence that can occur within the university context, but also outside the university walls, and different forms of violence that are perpetrated by partners, family member, acquaintance, or even strangers. The help desk operate in compliance with the right to anonymity and confidentiality, the right of the person and any witnesses of the confidentiality of the data and the information acquired. This means that as I will explain you later, we as a university, we don't have access to the sensible data of the person who are going to the help desk, since the help desk has been rightly decided to be managed by an external institution. What does it offer? The help desk offer one-to-one interview with an expert on male and gender violence in a safe environment where anyone that has suffered or witnesses violence can be given counseling, support, information, and can talk about their experience. The methodology that has been is used is the methodology that has been created by the feminist group who is running the help desk, which is the personnel from the Bologna Women's Center, and they use a methodology that is centered on the victim, and in order to support and give credibility to the voice and the experience and the emotion of the victim. Another offer is the telephone helpline, even in an emergency, with the possibility of starting with the consent of the person involved, an online support program involving the various services available in the metropolitan city of Bologna. And this means the social and health service, the law enforcement agency, and other associations and entities that can help the person to get out of the situation of violence. We have also the activation of the emergency procedure when necessary in order to immediately protect the person who has suffered the violence. The service also offers information on the other services, the key figures and the institutional bodies of the university regarding violence and gender discrimination, and provide orientation and information on legal aspect and on the most appropriate way to contact the competent authorities. And finally, it gives information in contact with the network of services and specialized local association for more complex situation, and also with hospital and social service in case the person who requires supports want to have more help. This service is open to the whole university community. So this means the students, the professional staff, the administrative staff, the teaching and research staff at any level, from full professor to PhD students and research fellow, and also to the huge variety of collaborators of the university, like readers, tutors, language trainers, and all the people that have a contract, even for a short time, they can have the support of the help desk. who is the responsible for the management and the coordination of the help desk? The service has been created as part of the area for students, even though it's not only for students, but for an administrative point of view, it was easier to create within this area, especially because we have a person who is responsible for these areas that has been from the very beginning extremely open, supportive, and sympathetic, which is, of course, in this situation is a key factor in implementing a service like this. The personnel who is responsible for the help desk is provided by people, women who are working at the Bologna Women's Center, Casa delle Donne per non subire violenza di Bologna. And in the last, and on this I will get back in a minute. And in the last few months, we have been creating a working group, which is interdisciplinary, let's say, from different area with different aims and goals of people in order to identify the correct procedure for internal reporting. And part of this group is me with the delegate for equity, the operator from the Women's Center, the confidential counselor, and the communication unit from the University of Bologna. So it's a group of different people with different, from different area that have decided to establish a smooth communication in order to have all the information necessary to have a internal reporting, a safe and smooth internal reporting, which is, of course, extremely important. As I told you, the management of the help desk has been entrusted for 3 years to the Bologna Women's Center, which was founded in 1990. The association was founded by a group of feminist women who design an anti-violence center capable of welcoming and concretely helping women who are subjected to violence. And now the association is a large and institutionalized association, is working on different levels to combat all forms of gender-based violence and promote activity related to cultural change. So they work here at university, but also they work with the hospital, they work inside the school. They organize every year a festival to during the month of November, collecting and coordinating all the events that are taking place in the city, because I don't know if you know, but Bologna is a very active city, especially thanks to the presence of a huge and extended community of students, but is also very active in terms of sensibilization on these issues from since many times. The desk adopts an intersectional approach, as has already been mentioned in the earlier presentation. We thought that it was very important to be able to take into account all the different possible form of discrimination against women and also against the different minority groups in terms of gender identity and sexual orientation. So the service is open to be able to tackle different form of discrimination. These are our contacts. As you can see, we have one day on Wednesday when the office is open in presence. We have an email account, a dedicated email account in order to get in touch with the service. We add a telephone that can be reachable through a phone call or WhatsApp. And the help desk is also available remotely. So this means that you can have a Teams interview if you need to ensure that the service is provided from a multi-campus perspective, and also the service is available in English. We decide to adopt a strong communication strategy, which is we decide from the very beginning, and our communication strategy is still going on, as I will try to show you. Of course, we have a website, a dedicated website with all the necessary information, with the description, the detailed description of the service, and all the contacts and the office hours and the email contacts through which the service can be reachable by everyone. We decide to spread this information with a message that was sent by the rector in January this year, with all the with the help desk, promoting the help desk and the other legal and policy instruments that the UNIBO has been setting up in the last few years, and this email message has been sent to the whole community. This means that more than 90,000 people were reached by this email message. We also create a video promotion with information regarding this help desk, and the video has been also circulated on our UNIBO Instagram as a reel, and also we are periodically promoting the help desk every month in order to ensure that especially the student community is aware of the presence of this service. We have also organized the national conference that will take place tomorrow. This is why I'm very busy. I have been very busy in the last few weeks and not able to send the presentation in advance, because I finished the presentation just this morning, because we have been organizing the first national conference with all the university help desk against gender-based violence that are operating in Italy. We have been mapping 11 help desks all over the country, both from the south, from the center, and from the north. So it is interesting to note that also the university from the south of Italy are active on this issue. This the one of the channel through which we promote the event. We decide, of course, to promote the event again on the first days of May in order to continue to commemorate our student Emma Pezzemo. And this is the screenshot from our web page, homepage of the University of Bologna. And we decide to use her photo and in order to raise awareness of the complexity of the gender-based violence. And we decide to use to adopt an interdisciplinary approach, because we apart from the 11 help desk that are operating in the academic context in Italy, we also invited association and a group of experts that are working at national level. For example, we have the National Network of Women's Center. His title is Dire, and we have invited the Vice President, Elena Biagioni. We have also invited a local association which is working with male perpetrators, and the name of the association is Senza Violenza. And we also invite one professor from Oxford Brookes, which is part of the UniSAFE project, because we, in our region, we want to enlarge our understanding of what's going on, also including the European dimension, and in order to learn also from what other European academic institutions are doing in the last few years. And we also include LGBTQI plus service, which is already working at the local level in Bologna, in order to exchange good practice also with them, because I think at the grassroots level in our city, there are extremely interesting experiment and good practice that can be look as a form of inspiration. In this event that will take place tomorrow, we also want to create a strong partnership with the local institution, and the opening part of the event will be with the municipality, the city council, and the region Emilia-Romagna, in order to reinforce our partnership with the institution. And as one of our objective, of course, is to conclude the day of tomorrow by with the aim of creating a national network with all the existing help desk in Italy. We hope this will be possible, and we hope that will be the possibility to reinforce each other and to exchange data and to exchange good practices. One thing that on which I want to conclude, I think is really important to raise awareness on gender-based violence as an issue which is related to the existing models of masculinity. So it's very important that we offer support to the women's or girls that are surviving gender-based violence, but it's also crucially important to raise awareness about the gender stereotype regarding male models. And in this way, I think it's really important to set up a policy of prevention and sensibilization, especially targeting a male audience. These are the data that we have been collecting, and this is, I think, my last slide. From October to December last year, we had in total 14 women that get access to the help desk. Among these 14 persons, 12 are students, one is a PhD candidate, and one is a researcher. Of course, in the majority of the cases, the perpetrator is the partner or the ex-partner. In 4 cases, the violence has been has occurred online. So this is also an interesting data that can bring us to think about the different form, the old but also the new form of gender-based violence, especially among a younger generation, that we have to work for the prevention at different level in presence, but also considering the online violence or the violence that is perpetrated in digital spaces. So this was my last I hope I was in time. I hope that I didn't take too much time, and I hope that it was enough clear. And I hope to have answered all the questions that Panagiota has sent me.
Thank you very much, Cristina. The presentation was very rich indeed, and we got a better understanding of the help desk at the University of Bologna. So now we have seen that we have a few questions in the chat box, and we know that they refer to the 7 Ps. But first, we would like to start with asking Cristina a few questions, if you are happy to answer to them. So starting from a few questions coming from the Yellow Window team, and we invite everyone to type questions in the chat box. Cristina, why an external service is better than an internal from your own perspective?
Okay, I think you can have multiple answers about this. First of all, an external association has probably the right expertise to provide this service. And within the university, we have different form of services that provide psychological support. But this is not simply a psychological support. As you know better than me, gender-based violence is a structural phenomenon. Of course, it affects individual, female individual, women individual, but is a cultural, socio-political, economic problem. So you have to adopt an holistic approach, and it's very important that the person, the staff who is working within gender-based violence help desk has the right approach in terms of what is behind the help desk, but also the methodology. Is very important that the person that are working within the help desk adopt the right methodology who gives credibility to the woman who is reporting the violence and is centered on is a women-centered approach. Second answer is about the confidentiality. an external service can ensure a confidentiality that probably a personnel that is working with within the university is not. But also is important that the people, the women, or the people from that decide to ask for support from the help desk perceive the service as independent. So they are feeling safe within the space and the confidentiality that can be entrusted by an external service. After tomorrow, I can be more clear about the other experience within the Italian context, but as far as I understood, the majority has been created with the support of external NGO or women association. Even maybe it is also due to the Italian context where the women association are strong enough to be able to give this kind of service. I don't know about other countries, so I don't know if it is something only that happens only in Italy or not, but the majority of the help desk that we have been mapping have been created in this hybrid way, as the one that has been done in Bologna.
Cristina, thank you for your answer. There is one more question regarding protection and the services that are provided. We would like to ask you more concretely for examples, which possibilities exist. And at the same time, I would like to combine that question with if the services that are provided by the help desk cover student victims suffering from gender-based violence in their private lives, unassociated to the institution.
Yes. The cases that have been reported are in all the 90% of the cases are students that reported violence that occurred in their private life, in their intimate relationships. So the violence was done by the partner or ex-partner. Only in one case, the perpetrators were part of the university system, so they were colleagues, and it was reported language violence, so that a group of colleagues use discriminatory or offensive language in their workplace. And in this case, the case has been reported internally with an internal procedure, because of course it affects also the working environment within the university.
Thank you, Cristina, for that. So there is one more question, which is related to how do we proceed if the perpetrator is a student. All our current internal legal provisions apply only to university staff members, is what the person is asking. So how do you proceed with that?
Well, the first point to be that should be clear is that the help desk can start like a legal or internal procedure only if the person who is reporting the violence wants to do that. So this means that the confidentiality should be broken. in order to legally report a case. Against a student, there is it's difficult to legally proceed as a university, while has been done against administrative staff or a teaching staff. But considering that the service is very new, so we don't have a very long case or history of reporting and procedure. So we are, for this reason, we started the help desk in October, and in January we set up the working group. So we are running against the time in order to create internal procedure and to identify the right internal procedure for different cases.
Thank you, Christina. In any case, in what we also suggest in UniSAFE is that the institution can, for example, put in place codes of conduct that apply also to students with related actions and sanctions that are outlined, so that internal disciplinary procedures can be implemented. So this can be part of the code of conduct. I see that the chat box is getting more lively as we speak, and we trigger the discussion. So maybe we can address a few questions that are shortly to be addressed, like how could you speak to whether independent NGOs can trigger the partnerships with higher institutions instead of the other way around? And in this, because this is for partnerships that we presented, we acknowledge, of course, the important role of the NGOs, but we don't promote putting the responsibility on the NGOs in our community. Instead, we believe that the institutions are those that have to take up the responsibility for tackling gender-based violence and for creating a favorable environment for partnerships, all in all. And maybe we can speak also about the question about the anti-discrimination law in Sweden. I can read this question, which says, we have a great discrimination law in Sweden, but we receive criticism from the UN because it is not followed up. There are no real consequences for universities that do not ensure that the discrimination law is followed. We have gender mainstreaming targets to meet at the universities, but we will not meet those either. And there are no consequences. What do you do when policies exist, but there is no follow-up or consequences if they're not followed? And I think this is a question for Panayota.
Yes, but I will also invite our colleagues from Yellow Window if they would like to add anything on that. So from what we understood, this is addressed mostly to, you're referring to the national legislation that is not followed up by the institution. So the attention here will be to focus on what is in the power of the institution. So is what about the institution and its stakeholders can do. So we recommend to focus on what is in our power. And in this case, we will suggest to exercise pressure on the institutional leadership, as gender-based violence is now considered one of the areas of focus of the European new announcement on implementing gender equality plans. So this could be a strong point to rely on, and we can use different arguments on that. For example, with the cost of having high-profile cases and how these are affecting the reputation of the institution. So as for UniSAFE now, we will soon publish recommendations to national policymakers, which will address this gap that you have mentioned. So that's all from my side. If anyone else would like to add from Yellow Window team, please feel free to do so. Vasia, we also, before moving on, if we can go back to another question that refers to the provision of services by one participant.
Yes. Which one do you mean, Panayota? Because,
sorry, yes, I can read it, of course. Sorry. So, Christina, as a research institute, we are as much smaller than a university. We're 300-ish employees and 50-ish PhD students. Does anyone have advice for providing effective services on a small scale? We can also perhaps address it. I think I lost Christina. I think she's frozen. I'm not sure.
I'm here.
Oh, sorry. It was frozen for my screen. Is there anything you would like to add on that for providing effective services for smaller scale universities, perhaps with limited resources?
Well, I think there is a very diverse measure that can be taken in order to promote or to combat. I think training and training for teaching, training for staff, training for students, transversal training for everybody is an important measure that can be taken. And the help desk, the service, or to create a collaboration with an already existing service that maybe is already working in the town or in the region can be an idea, or to create a remote online service just to start and see if it is work or not. It might be some possible strategy for smaller academic context. Of course, we are facing the opposite problem: how to reach 80,000 people that are coming from all over the country and are coming from abroad. And sometimes the communication should be very differentiated, should be really targeting different community that are that are living in the university. One friend of mine who is working as a vice president of the Bologna Women's Center advised me that the best way to promote the service is to use to promote the service in the toilet, in the women's toilet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've seen that as a good practice indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's probably is the only place. Is a confidential space. Is a separate space, and can be a way to promote or an existing service, or a possible way of raise awareness in general. And you can also promote the national helpline. I don't know, we have, for instance, a national helpline. You can promote a national helpline if you don't have resources to open one in your own context. These are just my brainstorming. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Christina, for this. Indeed, for small scale, we will also advise the partnering up with organizations, local organizations that are already experts offering services, as you mentioned, in order to make sure you can cover these. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina. And maybe we can move way back again in the chat box. We have one question which is about the 7P framework and if it can be applied outside the EU. So UniSAFE has included a few non-EU countries, and the model applied equally well. So we cannot speak of wide experience, but we see no reason why it wouldn't work outside the EU. And Also, there is one more question about the role of the unions as collaboration partners in the fight against gender-based violence. So we can think of a few examples. The trade unions can be helpful in co-designing policies, in awareness raising activities, and any other preventive measures. And also they are playing a vital role in the risk assessment. Also, we have seen that they can be chosen by victim survivors as trust persons in order to record a complaint formally or even informally to report an incident. So unions can be people that can be trained in order to understand what gender-based violence is about and what is happening inside an institutions and what are the formal and informal procedures, and in order to provide support which is trauma-informed and safe. And they can also exercise pressure on the institution to strengthen its policies. Finally, another example could be that unions could establish a liaison with the institution so that they provide info on informally made reports. And here we can see the role of the trade unions in identifying patterns inside the institutions and flows that are anonymized. So we can allow the institution to monitor and pick up any patterns that exist. So I hope that replies to that question. And I see we have more questions. Panayota, if you can help me picking.
Yes, we have one question refers to how long it can take to implement the 7P framework. And what we can say here is that it's a step-by-step process, and we need to perceive it as an ongoing, non-stop process. There is an end line, an end point that's set throughout this, and policy should be also monitored and constantly improved when possible. So for starters, we will encourage you to visit the action plan that UniSAFE designed for beginners when starting implementing the 7P framework, a comprehensive policy framework. Therefore, we will also add it again in the follow-up email for that. We have another question, if I may, since I have it here. It refers to the partnering up with UniSAFE to campaign against gender-based violence in our universities. For this, we have designed, again, a step-by-step guidance on how you can design and implement an awareness-raising campaign at your institution. For this, we have prepared a guidance with all the steps, but also some good practices that you can duplicate at your institution based on other already established awareness raising at other European institutions. So there is a webinar for these that you can watch. It's available on our YouTube channel, but the step-by-step guide will also give you access to a template where you can use to duplicate a good practice. We will also include this in the follow-up email. I think that's all we have left, if we haven't missed anything else.
We don't really have time for more questions, so we will collect and we'll send any answers and more information about UniSAFE.
Yes, of course. So following up the next question that we really appreciate to have you, we would like also to mention that we will also like to encourage you to follow up and keep up with UniSAFE's news, as we have just recently published the white paper that we really appreciate if you can also support in terms of visibility at your institution, but also national level. We will include this later in the follow-up email, and we're also adding it now in the chat. And we will also like to tell you that the toolkit of UniSAFE will be published soon in October, and it includes the 7P framework that we presented throughout this series. It includes more details for the various topics that we touched upon, and with additional inspiring practices and further readings. So it will be, I believe, a really useful tool for you to go deeper in different piece. So at this point, we would like to thank you all for attending this webinar series, and particularly the third and last webinar today. We look forward to seeing you again to our next activities. So we will get in touch with you in the next days, perhaps with all the materials and links that we mentioned throughout the last webinar. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Please keep in touch. You may subscribe to our newsletter if you want, or be part of the UniSAFE community so you can receive news about our next set of activities. Thank you, Christina, very much. Also.
Thank you to you for having me. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good luck tomorrow. Thank you, Christina.
So have a nice rest of Tuesday.